This month is actually the third anniversary of the release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator. It really doesn't feel like that much time has gone by, but I guess time flies when you're having fun. So I thought this would be a good time to make a video just reflecting on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel after all this time. The good, the bad, just everything that I think about it, and some of the things I feel like it does well, some of the places I feel like it could still improve, and get you guys' opinions on it as well. That's pretty much what we do over here on APS Amplifier is we just talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot. So yeah, I want to hear what everybody else has to say and hear you guys' experiences in the comments. At first, I was going to kind of organize this into like, good, bad, ugly, or something kind of like that. But I realized that I don't actually have any like objectively bad things to say about Master Duel, not really. So I feel like I've just kind of got a list of stuff I want to talk about. We'll start with the good and the things I really like, and then we'll just talk about places where it's like mixed or could use improvement. And yeah, then maybe some like thoughts for just the overall future of Master Duel. So first things first, I think that this game nails presentation first and foremost more than almost anything else. So Master Duel looks and runs great. I love it. I truly do. I like that the duel fields are just very easy to see and like visualize. It's easy to read the cards and like just their names, what they do. The UI is very nice. But my favorite part about the presentation is easily the combination really of the summoning animations and the music in the game. I like the way that, whenever you summon a boss monster, it gets the cool kind of animated 2D like animation. I think that that is so awesome. I know some people prefer the like 3D summon things from stuff like Duel Links and some older Yu-Gi-Oh games, but I actually think that the way that they integrated the slightly animated like 2D art just kind of coming off the card works better for the pace that Master Duel moves at. So I really like that, and I love the way that the music changes when that happens. And then also the music changes again whenever your life points get low or whenever your opponent has enough damage on board to potentially kill you that turn. So basically you get these really cool dynamic matches that just go from like, okay, the duel starts and it's kind of chill and, competitive. Then like it heats up whenever somebody summons a key card. And then finally right before, the potential big finish is where the music kind of hits a climax. I think that they just did such a great job with the variety of music in the game, especially when it comes to things like the Duelist Cups, where they get like kind of these special theme songs for that. Absolutely amazing. Shout out to Yasunori Nishiki. He is the composer for the Master Duel soundtrack. He also worked on games like Octopath Traveler and the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth games, and many other games as well. Just great, phenomenal work. I truly get so into the duels when I hear the music and I see the animations and even just some of the small little effects that they've added into the game. Stuff like how a lot of like staple cards like Monster Reborn or Heavy Storm or Lightning Storm or kind of whatever all have animations that go along with them, hearing the Ash Blossom laugh and stuff like that. I like that. I think it's a really nice touch. There's just enough of them that like they'll show up in most games. Like you're always going to kind of see like, an Ash or a Valor, Triple Tactics Talent, Imperm, stuff like that happening. And so I think that it's cool because there's just enough of them to kind of stay, it stays apart, but it doesn't like overstay its welcome, if that makes sense. And also even just the sort of subtle stuff like how like when you summon a monster that's got high stats, it slams onto the board. Whereas like if it's like a weaker or low level monster, it just gets like placed on the board. So little things like that I think go a long way. Also, just the overall cosmetics that the game offers are great. I like that there are so many mates. I remember when the game first came out and people were like, oh, there's not actually all that many. But basically with every new update, they add a new mate somewhere. And I think that the mates are easily some of my favorite parts of the game. I like using the Raikou mate right now, but there's just so many. I'm hoping that one day they'll add a Rescue Ace Hydrant because that's one of my other favorite cards, or maybe like a Rika Petal. And the duel fields all look really good too. They've been adding a lot of just neat new ones. At first, the duel fields kind of felt generic, like, oh, it's a fiery volcano or something like that. But now nowadays we kind of get a mixture of generic duel fields, like just the sort of glacier mountain one you guys might know about, but then also more specific ones like the Sword Soul one or the Kashtira one or just things like that. So yeah, I think that overall Master Duel nails presentation and aesthetics extremely well. I love it, truly, it's great. The next thing I wanted to talk about too is that I think that Master Duel does a good job with its events. So they're not perfect, but I do think that running events like, the Fusion Festival, the Synchro Festival, the Fusion X Synchro Festival, and all the different things in between are really fun. The events typically last for a little over a week, which I think is more than enough time for people to get in, their reps and play. There's usually prizes for like getting to a certain like amount of wins or medals or whatever. in an event, and then also like if you completely cap your medals and you get a title, which usually isn't all that important for most people. For most people, they're just in it for like the cool sleeves or maybe the mate that you can win from doing it. But I do think that the events are really fun. They give a nice twist on the rule sets. It's kind of fun to see how Yu-Gi-Oh would be played if you could only play synchro decks or only play Xyz decks, or having these like type-based events. The reason I say they're not really perfect is because typically when they do these events, they will implement a custom ban list for them. And most of the time, I think that they do a good job with these custom ban lists. Like, they're very well aware of what decks would probably squeak through the cracks. Like, if they do an event where it's like, okay, you can only use fusions and Xyz in your extra deck, then they know that a lot of people would just try to play a deck that doesn't use an extra deck at all, like maybe like a True Draco or a Fluanderies or something like that. And so what they'll just do is like they'll limit most of the best cards from those decks so that you usually can't play them. Sometimes some weird burn strategy squeaks through the cracks, and that's kind of not always fun. But I also think that partly that's on the players. Like at the end of the day, like there's always going to be players who will take these interesting rule sets but still just try to, like how can I just cheese a win anyway and kind of subvert all the rules. So it's kind of a balancing act, but I think that they generally do a pretty good job of it. I sort of wish that you could queue into these same events even when they're not active. So even if there weren't rewards for it, you could just queue into the fusion only ladder or the synchro only ladder. But I think that the reason they do that is because they probably don't want to fragment too many of the like different ladders and queues and stuff. But I think it would be really cool. People can let me know what they think about that. Anyway, the next thing that I like about Master Duel is how free-to-play friendly it is. And it's weird because every time I say this, I think most people agree and understand that Master Duel is pretty free-to-play friendly. But there's always people who are like, oh, Master Duel is so expensive to play. And I'm just like, I don't really know how you're feeling that way. Because to me, I think Master Duel, just if you play it every day or every other day and you just kind of get in your reps and stuff, the game is quite generous with how many gems it gives you. Like, I've not had to spend any money since like the very early release days, and I was just like, okay, I just want to buy some gems on like day one. But after that, it's been 3 years and I don't spend money on gems, but I'm always able to build new decks when I want to. Sometimes that means, having to grind for maybe like a week to get the stuff that I need, but I would take that over having to pay like 300 real life dollars for a deck any day of the week. So I think that they've done a really good job with making the game accessible. I think it just comes down to the fact that like you're not going to be able to build absolutely every single deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Immediately on day one, like with the amount of gems that you get. But I think that the system that they have where you can craft cards individually or pull them from packs is very good. And it even, I would say, goes a step further because the like purchasing rates for the gems, like you actually just want to play like pay money to get the gems, are awful. So it almost is like telling you don't actually buy gems unless you are truly desperate. Just play the game for a week or two and you will probably get enough gems to open some packs and pull some URs and dismantle them. And like, it's a process. I think it's a game that you have to play fairly regularly for that to really benefit you. But still, I think that they could have just been so much worse. They could have not had a crafting system at all and just been like, okay, you just got to pull the stuff. I know Duel Links is a little bit closer to that system and it's a lot more, dare I say, predatory with the spending. So yeah, I think Master Duel kind of nailed the like free to play part really well, at least in my opinion it did. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is that I think that Master Duel is actually really receptive to feedback. And they do surveys pretty much after every major event and every like Duelist Cup and stuff like that, or just randomly they will do surveys. Sometimes they offer you a few gems for it. I think that when people think about what, being receptive to surveys means, there's kind of a different definition that everybody's going to have. Like I know that in a lot of those surveys, and we're going to talk about this card later, people will put ban Max C, ban the Roach, it's ruining the game. And, because they have not really like hit that card, or at least not banned that card, people are like, oh, they don't listen to any feedback. They don't care what the players want. I asked for Maxi to be banned and it wasn't banned. And so like, I'm mad. They don't care about anything. But if you actually look at the update history for Master Duel, they have slowly but steadily added in so many small little UI tweaks and improvements and features that people have asked for that just improve the general quality of life, quality of play. So for instance, I think adding sort of visualizations for like, the imperm column or counting the summons for Nibiru, those are really cool. They've also sped up the animations for things like, excavating cards for Pot of Prosperity or banishing the top cards for like a Pot of Desires type of card. There are so many little things like that. You can change the text size of card effects now. That wasn't something that was available at the start. All of that little stuff really does add up, and I don't think that they get enough credit for it. One of my favorite things actually is just being able to check the deck list, like check your own deck list at any time. So you can like see how many copies of a card that you're running. If you don't have like a target to search for something or like activate a certain thing, you can kind of keep track of that. It's little stuff. A small aside that I'll make on that too is that some people feel as though a few of the like note-taking type features, like the quality of life features, like having a log and all that, are, some people don't like them because they feel like it's more information than you would get when you play like the physical paper TCG. Like for instance, in the paper TCG, you don't really get to like note take on a notepad and like keep a log of every single card that was activated. Note taking is pretty highly regulated. It's only like limited to very specific, like, you know, game state things and stuff like that. Whereas in Master Duel, you can just check all this stuff, and some people feel like that makes it like training wheels or whatever. But I disagree. I think that it just makes the game more enjoyable. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more accessible to play Yu-Gi-Oh that way. We know that Yu-Gi-Oh can be really complicated. I talk about this all the time. So the fact that Master Duel kind of takes some of the edge off by just letting you like check, okay, my opponent searched this last turn, or, you know, I still have this many copies of this card left in my deck, or, you know, this card effect has like already been activated this turn, so it gets like a little check mark or whatever. Like, that's good. I think that that doesn't hurt anybody. I think it's really useful to have. I know some people are more mixed on things like, you know, the imperm column glowing or whatever to let you know not to use spells and traps in it, but people still do it. So, I mean, I've seen people, that's happened to people. I've probably done it at least once. So yeah, I think that those quality of life features are really nice, and most of that stuff comes from surveys that they do, where people, you know, they'll ask like, what do you think of like the pace of gameplay and the speed of animations, and so they'll tweak it based on that. One feature that I asked for a very long time that got added in some months back was actually the ability to select like what song you hear, because early on, for like the first 2 years of Master Duel, there's this weird thing where basically there's like Master Duel's got a lot of different songs, but it would only play like one of 3 songs or so in ranked like ladder play, despite the fact they would add more dual fields. They wouldn't play any different songs on them. I feel like this was kind of maybe an unintended bug or something, and so I would always write about this in all of the surveys. I'd be like, hey, I would love the ability to maybe like pick custom music, or maybe just play the music that matches my field instead of my opponent's field or whatever. And eventually they actually added that feature in, so now there's the ability to they fixed all the songs for the different dual fields, where like each song sort of matches each field, or you can just play the song that's on your dual field at all times. And I think that's amazing. That's really good. They listened to my feedback and mine alone, because I'm sure nobody else complained about that. No, but in all seriousness, that is a really cool example of them listening to feedback. So very good. The last good thing, and this is one that I've had to kind of come around to, and I think more people are beginning to come around to it, is the Master Duel ban list. Now, this is a bit of a contentious one, because I think that when Master Duel released, the way that ban lists worked seemed a little bit off-putting to a lot of people. Master Duel ban lists, already there's like a whole card pool conversation to be talked about, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. But just in general, Master Duel's ban lists seemed random. They like to just hit random cards to like 2. Like they just be like, okay, we're just going to semi-limit these 3 or 4 random cards, and it would always be like something that just doesn't even, it feels almost inconsequential. Like, you know, early on, I remember like semi-limiting Sword Soul Long Yuan, or like kind of a random one-off runic card that you maybe only run 1 copy of or 2 copies of, and they like put it to 2, and it always just seemed like so weird. Like, what are they doing with this? Why are they doing this? And I felt the same way. It almost felt like, are they just using like an AI or just some weird algorithm? And I think I have a better understanding now of kind of how they approach these ban lists. I think that they're approaching it how a lot of mobile games do, and I've spoken to some mobile game developers about like how they handle balancing in more like just typical gacha games and stuff like that, and realized that it's more about like win rates and kind of play rates as opposed to actual card power. So, for example, if a current deck, like let's say Fire King Snake Eye is still like a pretty good deck in Master Duel, if its win rate is something like 60%, that might be deemed a little bit too high by the development team, so their goal is to get its win rate down to like 58%. And so because it's a digital game, they have all the data and information on like what the win rates for this deck is, what the win rates are for when, say, like a card like when Snake Eye Ash resolves successfully, this person wins 79% of games. And so I think that they take all that data and they use that to make a more informed decision about like, okay, if we were to limit Snake Eye Ash to 2, or limit it to 1, or kind of limit this card or that card, or semi-limit this or that, we can gradually kind of tweak and shave down that power level to the extent that maybe this deck is still good and playable, but its win rate is down to like 58% or 57%, and that's within the standard deviation that we're interested in. I will be, I totally understand that is not everybody's cup of tea as for how a ban list should be done. A lot of people feel like these consistency hits can actually end up making decks feel sackier instead, or it can just sort of make it where like the deck ceiling is still just as high as it was, but it just feels more like unreliable, more like high rolly. At the end of the day, though, I play so much Master Duel that I feel where they're coming from with it. Like I sort of feel the effects whenever a card goes from like 3 to 2 or from 2 to 1, and you have to and you see it less, because it can kind of change more dynamics than you would think. Like if a card like Aliber, which finally like recently came to 3 or something, I think, but when Aliber was at like 1 or was it 2, it meant that and also Branded Fusion was at 1, it did mean that like you could more safely imperm an Aliber, for instance, because it's like, well, the chances of them having Branded Fusion in their hand are a lot lower. Again, I know that's not like the ideal game balance for everyone, but it does come up. And I think that in more recent months, they've been doing a pretty good job of like cutting down on floodgates, which I know a lot of people don't really love floodgate cards. And they've even been hitting some of the hand traps. Like they hit Dimension Shifter to 1, they hit Cyframe Gamma to 1, they recently hit Maxi to 2. So, I think that they are aware of like what it is that can kind of make the games unplayable and unpleasant. Typically Master Duel goes for a lot of like FTK type things and burn loops pretty well, I would say. And the last thing I'll add about the ban lists too is that Master Duel doesn't typically like slaughter decks. Like it tends to not ban archetype cards for decks, whereas the TCG will sometimes do that a little bit more often. So I think that the goal for Master Duel, because it is a digital game and like, you are having to craft these cards, and they don't want people to like get gems and craft cards and feel like their whole deck got hit, is by hitting cards more like lightly, like just putting something to 2, putting something maybe to 1. They ensure that your gem investments get to kind of not feel like, they're wasted. And any deck can be played in Master Duel, even if it's not absolutely amazing. So yeah, okay, a lot of talk about ban lists. Next thing, these are the improvement areas or more mixed areas for Master Duel. And we'll be kind of returning to some of those like ban list topics and things like that. So the first big one is Maxi. I feel like it's just the elephant in the room, and everybody's always got some opinion on Maxi, right? So to me, Maxi is a card that it's so polarizing. It's been at 3 in Master Duel for the longest time. They very recently announced that it's finally going to be getting semi-limited, but up to now, it has always been at 3. It has always had an extremely high play rate, oftentimes only maybe being bested by Ash Blossom in terms of like, percentage of decks that use it in high-ranking duels, so like 90+% sometimes. And people just, Maxi, it's one of those cards. It's polarizing and it's divisive. I do not love Maxi. I want to be clear about that. I'm not like, a Maxi apologist. I don't love this thing to death. But I also think that Master Duel realized that Maxi does a pretty good job of like just kind of keeping certain things in check and ensuring that more lower tier decks can sort of play by just using Maxi. They can ensure that they get a turn. I get it. I know all the arguments about Master Duel or about Maxi and Master Duel, and like that it's really broken when the person who went first also draws Maxi and all this stuff. I totally understand, but I do know that they did a good job, I think, of just including it so that you can play lower tier decks. Now that the Molcharmies are in the game, it's seeming like they might be finally starting to kind of like rein in Maxi. They just put it to 2. It might go to 1 or even banned eventually. But I think that Maxi's existence up until that point was surprisingly justified and actually made Master Duel feel like a place where you could play more decks than you can play in the TCG. So yeah, it's also more of an OCG kind of, I think, approach to ban lists and like formats and things like that. And speaking of that, we got to talk about the card release timing, because this is one of the ones that also made Master Duel really, people didn't always love this about Master Duel, like early on. I think that, so with Master Duel's in a weird spot. It gets cards basically 3 to 6 months after they're released in the TCG. And also, they're not even always in the same order. So sometimes, like, you'll get a few cards, like, 30% of the cards from Raid of the Abyss might be coming out here in a couple of months, but, like, it won't be all of them. And then, like, there will be some cards that are, finally just coming in from the Infinite Forbidden and stuff like that. The timing is a little bit mixed up and weird, and that can be a bit annoying because it's like, you want to play your favorite decks, but, like, they don't, Master Duel doesn't have them out yet, or maybe it doesn't have like its new support yet, and that can make it feel like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to wait an eternity to be able to like play my favorite deck that just got the cool new stuff, like the new Centurion cards or something. But one small perk to that, and I think there's also a reason why they do it this way. First of all, I think the reason is because they want you to like buy physical cards first and be interested in the physical paper game first, and then like add it to Master Duel later. But also, I think that by sort of mixing up the release order, like they don't just say, okay, we're gonna release everything from the Infinite Forbidden all at once, or everything from Rage of the Abyss all at once. By mixing it up, they actually ensure that we get slightly different formats from the TCG. This is something that Jesse Cotton actually pointed out in a video recently that I was watching. And I think it's actually cool. Like the fact that, you know, tier limits look different in Master Duel than they did in the TCG. Even after the post bannings in both formats, they are two very different decks. So effectively, you kind of have TCG Yu-Gi-Oh, OCG Yu-Gi-Oh, and then Master Duel like Yu-Gi-Oh. And I don't think that that's like always going to be everyone's cup of tea. I think a lot of people wanted Master Duel to be more of like a one-to-one simulator for the TCG, so you could use it for testing and, you know, that sort of stuff. But it's just not that. And I mean, 3 years in, I've just kind of accepted that Master Duel is sort of its own format, its own thing. It's still Yu-Gi-Oh! At the end of the day, and I still enjoy it. But I think that kind of, when you look at it that way, it helps me rationalize it a little bit more. Do I think it'd be nice if they could slightly increase the timetables for getting cards into Master Duel? Yes. I would like to play, you know, there's a few cards in a few different decks that I want to really be able to play in Master Duel. I want to get the new Mermail support, and I really wish I could have it yesterday, because that's like a deck that I'd really enjoy playing. And then sometimes they'll make these exceptions, like Fire King Volcanics released earlier in Master Duel than it did in the TCG, and things like the Hollow and Ween cards, you know, Promethean Princess and stuff, like it came out earlier than it did in the TCG. So like they'll randomly do that. I don't really know exactly why. I guess they just pick cards that they think the players will really enjoy, or maybe it's like a timely holiday release thing. But yeah, you know, I think that the card release timing problem, when you've played Master Duel long enough, you just kind of begin to accept it, and hopefully they'll just speed it up just a little bit, but I don't hate it as it is now. Okay, other weird areas for improvement. These can go a little bit quicker because I feel like we've covered the big stuff. First of all, it's a little bit strange to me that we don't have like a proper offline supported, like offline, I don't know if that's the word for it. Basically, I'm talking about the Challenger Cups. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Has these Challenger Cups, and they mostly only exist in Europe. And they're these events that just happen on the weekends. They're hosted by, you know, different Yu-Gi-Oh! European Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creators, and they'll live stream them. They did them briefly in North America last year, around like April or so. I actually got to host a few of them. Thanks, Konami. That was cool. And basically, it's just this company that Konami kind of contracts with, and they run the tournaments through Discord. The pricing's actually really cool. You can win, you know, things like these Master Duel hoodies, those custom Master Duel sleeves, the Rescue Rabbit plushes, and at the bigger ones, they're even giving out like PS5s and Steam Decks. So that's pretty nice, just for like, you know, topping and winning and all that. I think these events are really fun. However, it's weird because they sort of stopped doing them in the United States, like, or in North America or whatever. So that sucks. I don't know what their reason for it is. They've also fallen behind on prizing, like sending out the prizes for those events for a lot of people. I haven't even gotten my compensatory like prizing for running them, not to mention the actual winners of said tournaments just have not gotten their stuff yet. So get on that, Konami. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, so that's a thing. But the main point I was trying to make with that is that it doesn't feel like there's like a formal league or anything really for Master Duel. And it's strange because I thought that when Master Duel came out, I kind of got the impression that they wanted Yu-Gi-Oh! To almost become a bit more of like an esport, and you know, Master Duel could be this secondary way where like a duelist could have a route toward improvement and a route towards, you know, like worlds and just recognition and becoming like a Master Duel only player or something. And we don't really have too much of that. Like the Challenger Cups are cool. They don't get a lot of buzz. I think that they would probably get more just by being in more places. So that would be great. Please bring back the US Challenger Cups, Konami. But yeah, it's weird, and like they're run outside of the game, and that's something that I'm going to actually get into a little bit more in here in a second. But yeah, the fact that they're kind of run externally through Discord, that alone is not a problem. Like you obviously have to have some degree of oversight for it. But the fact that the game doesn't have like a tournament mode and stuff is a little bit funky. It can make it complicated to run things, like having to choose who goes first and like, you know, kind of rigging coin flips. That could be like functionality that's really in the game. But yeah, the point is, instead, if you want to get to Master Duel Worlds, you have to do it through the Duelist Cup. And the Duelist Cup is its own form of controversy. I remember watching that one video where somebody was saying that, like, mathematically the Duelist Cup is a human rights violation, and I tend to agree. I think that the way the Duelist Cup works is kind of toxic. It's multi-sided, though, or at least two-sided, because the way the Duelist Cup works is good for statistics. For reference, by the way, the Duelist Cups are those things where it's like every few months, and it will last like 2 weeks, and the first, like, there's like a stage 1 where you have to, like, you know, just win matches to get to stage 2. And then stage 2 is a 72-hour just like sort of free-for-all where, like, winning gets you points, losing loses you points. After 72 hours, whoever's the top ranked people, those people get to go to Worlds, they get invites to Worlds, so on and so forth. It's really rough because it basically, for many people at least, it incentivizes just playing the game endlessly for 72 hours. We've seen live streams of people just playing rigorously with the only real break being to sleep, like for maybe an hour, or like to briefly get some food or take a bathroom break, and like that's it. Like I remember Joshua Schmidt did one, and like he played for 59 or 60 hours of the 72-hour period, and that's crazy. Some people have work and they have to like miss work for it, but they want to get to Worlds. This is the only way to do it. I think that if they could find any better of a system for that, that would be great. Maybe having like designated windows of time in which you can play, or a cap on the amount of matches that you can play in a given day, just so people like, okay, maybe you only get a max of, 30 matches or something in a day, and after you've hit that maximum, you can't, do any more of them until the next day. I don't know. Someone probably has a better idea of that than I do, but I just find that the system, really, they're not, no, to be clear, Konami's not telling you have to do any of this, right? Like, if you do super well on day 1, you could technically just kind of coast and be fine or whatever. Like, but the Konami's not, they don't have a gun to your head. They're not making you play for 72 hours, but man, it can really feel that way. So, yeah. Now, I'm also not one of these people who's like doing the Duelist Cup to go to World. I just do it as a fun little personal challenge for myself. I live streamed it last time. Shout outs to the people who tuned into that. It was a fun time. But yeah, I would like maybe some sort of a change in that. It's weird, but they've been doing that since Duel Links with their Duelist Cup or Kaiba Corp Cup or whatever it is in that game. So it's probably not changing. Okay. Last couple quick things. I feel like I would like to see integrated tournament options in the game. That's something that, like I said, with the Challenger Cup thing, it would be nice if like the game could kind of have an integrated tournament system. This seems like it'd be, at least for, pairing people off, or like skipping the whole like weird coin flip thing, so you could just have it set to best of 3. That gets me into the next thing, which is I know a lot of people want best of 3 in Master Duel because that's what the TCG has. I agree with the decision not to have best of 3 be a thing in ladder, because best of 3 takes a long time. People, I know, like if you've been, just raised on the TCG, you're used to this idea of like, I want game 2, I want game 3, I want to be able to side deck and all these things. But the queue, like, is, I think a lot of people just hop on Master Duel after work and they just want to get a few reps in, a few games, and best of 1 works better for that. Best of 3 would mean like you'd be like sitting there for 45 minutes every time you queue. And I know that there's an obsessive person out there who wants that, but the vast majority of people I think are fine with best of 1. My compromise though is that I do think that best of 3 should at least be an option that you have, particularly when you're like playing in duel rooms or playing with friends. So that way when people are doing tournaments, it can just work like that. They could even maybe do a best of 3 ladder, but I actually think that you'd be surprised how few people would hang out in there, because like, I don't want to like play against the same person for like 45 minutes. I like kind of being able to get in and get out. For me, that's my fun way of doing Master Duel. I also think that maybe having some other features for duel rooms would be good. Like right now you can have up to 50 people in a duel room. That's kind of weird because Duel Links offers 100 people in a duel room. And also Duel Links has a really cool feature where once you're in a duel room, you can just have it like, you can like start kind of a timer, and it just pairs people up against each other. And so basically for like an hour or 2 hours or whatever, everybody just duels against each other and they get points, like it's algorithmically calculated. And at the end of the 2 hours, you get to see like the leaderboards of who, got the most points. So it could be a fun way to just kind of have some fun like duels with your friends. Like if you have 3 or 4 friends, you guys just make a duel room and do that. But I think that for like streamers and, people like me or whatever who just want to like live stream the game and play matches against viewers and maybe spectate some matches, I can make a duel room. It can have 100 people. You guys who are watching can all just be paired off against each other. And it kind of gives everybody a way to stay engaged, as opposed to just everybody's hoping to wait their turn to duel against, the one content creator or whatever who's hosting it. So I think that would be a really nice, solid improvement. And it's, the blueprint's there because Duel Links done it already. So yeah. Let me see. Anything else on here? I mean, you know, I still, like I mentioned earlier, I would like the ability to maybe queue into some different game modes, maybe take those different festivals and dual trial rule sets that they have, because they've even messed around with like GOAT format and hat format, or at least kind of similar equivalents to them. So letting people maybe queue into that would be fun. I think the reason they don't do like a GOAT format ladder is because once you get your GOAT format cards, like once you've crafted them or pulled them, you would never really have any more reason to ever spend gems or like buy more packs again. So they'd rather you really be on the treadmill of like the new stuff, not just like get your GOAT deck and do that for 10 years. So, you know, maybe they could change, they can. There was one Yu-Gi-Oh game, I think it was Legacy of the Duelist, where they had a system where like, you know, you paid gems or whatever the currency was in that game, and you kind of got to rent a deck. Like this is for Battle Pack Draft, which that's a feature that Master Duel could use. It's kind of a fun little draft format. But yeah, you paid like maybe 1,000 gems, you get this Edison pool or like this kind of GOAT format pool of cards, and you get to play like 10 duels with it, and then like, you know, you have to pay again and play again. That's something that I heard somebody suggest. I thought that was a kind of a neat idea. Either way, though, yeah, just more things to queue into would be super fun. I do think, like I just remembered, a draft format for Master Duel sounds like it'd be a good time. I would love it. I think being able to play with Battle Pack in a way that feels dynamic and like every experience is different, that's kind of the joy and fun of draft. I'm totally game for that. So, yeah, and then a couple of other things I want in the future is the AI duel feature that they've shown off last year. They kind of showed this feature where, like, and they've been integrating it a little bit into the game, where you can like see like, you know, what card win rates are and percentage rates and all that stuff. They seem to be like developing this smart AI thing where you could basically like duel against a computer that plays decks well. And we've seen this in a lot of like the fan simulators that Yu-Gi-Oh has, like EDO Pro, WIGO Omega. I think that people would like it just as a way to like test decks without having to necessarily play online. I think could be pretty fun. So like if you want to, you've built a deck and you want to kind of do test hands in a low stakes situation where your ranking or whatever isn't going to go down, that'd be cool. Casual mode, I guess technically is a way of doing that, although I feel like casual mode just, it should at least still let you get maybe like your daily rewards for it. Like there's no rewards for playing casual mode, so I feel like nobody even queues into it. Even when I've tried to, it takes longer to find a match, so that could perhaps use some improvements. But yeah, that's basically I think that's everything I had to say about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. This video is already over 30 minutes, so I hope I got through most of my points. I will just reiterate that while I, you know, obviously think that Master Duel can always be improved here and there, I truly feel like it is a great game. I think Konami did a really good job. In my opinion, I've tried out some other card game simulators recently, and Master Duel just shines far and away above a lot of these other card game simulators. Just the music, the presentation, it looks and runs so well. But on the other hand, it is missing some, in my opinion, sort of crucial game modes. And then there's also aspects of Master Duel that sort of seemed a little bit weird at the start, like the ban list and the card pool and the maxi thing. But like, as you play, they start to sort of make a little bit more sense, at least in my opinion. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That is my Master Duel thoughts. I want to hear everything that everybody's got to say down below in the comments. And oh, one last thing I remembered. One fun Master Duel memory that I've had is being able to play in those Yu-Gi-Oh! Konami Content Creator Invitationals. They've invited me to the first two. I don't know if they're planning on a third one, but I haven't heard anything about it. But if you are, Konami, invite me, because I've actually managed to get trophies from the last two. So pretty cool. It's also how I won this Ash Blossom back there in the background. Yeah, okay. It's going to be it. I will see you guys in the next one, or maybe I'll just duel you on Master Duel. It'll be fun. All right, pass turn.